السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وصلوات الله وسلامه على أفضل خلق الله سيدنا وحبيبنا رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. Just to clarify, last time's discussion revolved around the concept of muhasabah. And we discussed and we defined the concept of muhasabah as taking account of oneself. And we read the saying of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anh, regarding this concept. And we understood that it's an essential concept in one's pursuit for the hereafter. Now, muhasabah is something that can be at the utmost level, and it can also be at a very basic level. What Imam al-Muhasibi was trying to show us is the highest standard of what muhasabah is, by stating, وَرَاقِبِ اللَّهَ فِي كُلِّ نَفْسٍ, be vigilant of Allah for every breath, and take account for every thought. Again, one has to understand the time, and one has to understand the individual who is saying something like this. As we know, he is someone who exemplified what muhasabah is, because that's what he was known for. He was known as Al-Imam Al-Muhasibi because of this very concept that he embodied. He embodied the idea of muhasabah. So that is a level, and that's a level that every person should aspire, that he takes account for every breath that he takes, because nothing is for free. But at the end of the day, the maqsad, the goal, the objective, is that a person should spend his time, monitor his time in such a manner that he doesn't waste any of his life. At every time, there is something that a person can do to benefit himself, either in terms of his world or in terms of his hereafter. Worldly or ukhrawi, dunyawi or ukhrawi, there is some form of benefit that a person can accrue for himself, and he should be aspiring to do so. That is the maqsad. So one can only do that if he is in a constant motion of change. He wishes to change. He wishes to do what is best for himself. Later on, he will speak about the idea of islahul nafs. We aspire to do islah. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ وَمَا أُرِيدُ إِلَّا الْإِصْلَاحَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُ. That's something that every person desires, but the islah starts where? It starts with oneself. If one doesn't do islah, if one doesn't rectify himself, he's not going to rectify anything. So this is something that is an essential component in one's islah of himself, that he takes account. The easy way or an easy solution to this is, at the end of the day, Maghrib Salah, a person should recount his day. And he should think of, what did I do today that was different from what I did yesterday? Have I done anything that will bring me any benefit in the hereafter? Or have I done anything at all that could have brought me any benefit in this world? And could I have done it better? If a person thinks about this, and then inshallah you will see a type of transformation taking place right before him. And that is the maqsad. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. The initiation needs to come from you, needs to come from me, needs to come from us. Then Allah will rectify our surroundings as well, inshallah. So inshallah we will continue with the reading of the saying of Ali radiyallahu anh. Karramallahu wajhah. He says, لا تخف إلا ذنبك. If you're going to have fear, then do not fear anything except for your sin. You do not fear someone else. Neither do you fear an authority but you fear the punishment of the ultimate authority. And that's when you decide to give preference to yourself over him. So the one thing that you should fear is disobedience. Fear that the repercussion of your sin. He wanted you to do something and you decided to do what is against it. So you should fear the repercussion of that. But at the same time, you don't get into a state of complete anxiety and depression. But you should do what? At the same time, have hope. He says, وَلَا تَرْجُوا إِلَّا رَبَّكَ. And this is phenomenal. This is for some of us who know, for those who know the Arabic language, and we know that sometimes not everything is mentioned explicitly. Sometimes you have to assume. Some meanings are implied. His sayings goes, لا تخف. Don't fear anything. The anything is omitted here, except for your sin. At the same time, do not have hope for anything or from anything except from your Lord. Have hope from your Lord. And there are a few incidences here just to highlight or illustrate to us what this really means. There was a great ascetic, a great saint of the past by the name of Ahmad ibn Abi Ghalib al-Baghdadi of the 6th century. Someone once came to him. He was known for a person of righteousness, a person of piety, a person of denouncement from the world. So people would come to him and ask him for dua. Hazrat, dua kijiye. So someone came to him and they said, perhaps you, if not you, you can actually lead me to someone who could make a dua for me. So the great Imam himself says that, Ya akhi, qum bina, qum ma'i nusalli rak'atain. He said, oh my brother, come with me. Let us stand up and perform 2 rakat of salah. And let's ask Allah, ونسأل الله تعالى. فأنا لا أترك بابا مفتوحا وأقصد بابا مغلقا. Why? Because I'm not going to leave a door that's wide open. An endless door. It's a wide open door, and go try to find a door that is locked. Hope for entrance into a door that's locked. Why? Because the individual that you're asking help from doesn't have more love for you than the one that you are expecting that benefit from. It is Allah at the end of the day. That's why you go to, you ask Him to make dua for you. But Allah loves you more than so-and-so. So why would you do that? There's another great incident of one of the kings of the past. A beggar once came to him and asked him to make dua for him. Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah narrates the story in his book Al-Luqat fi Hikayat al-Salihin. So he came and he found that this individual, the king himself, is on the floor. He's begging. He's not begging from someone. He's in prostration. He's in dua. He's in sajda. So the beggar thinks to himself that هذا محتاج إلى غيره فكيف أحتاج أنا إليه. This individual, he's in need of someone other than himself. How can I be in need of him? This is your spiritual psychology. This is at the very root of what this is all about. Your psyche, where is it? How do you view yourself? How do you view the people around you? And how do you really view the world? So this is amazing. The individual who saw that this person is in need of someone other than himself, how can I be in need of him? He says then, لِمَ لَا أَرْفَعُ حَاجَتِي إِلَى مَنْ لَا تَخْتَلِجُ الْحَوَائِجُ عِنْدَهُ. Then why should I not raise my need to that individual that finds no problem in solving everyone's need? And the Emir, the king, heard him say this. Then he raised his head. And he says, call that person. عَلَيَّ بِالرَّجُلِ. So then the man was brought in front of him. He said, give him 10,000. 10,000 dirham, 10,000 dinar. Just give him 10,000. And then he said something very profound. He said, إنما أعطاك هذا من كنت أدعوه وأنا ساجد ومن رجعت إليه. The one who actually gave you this is the one that I was prostrating to. I was making sajda to him. And the one that you were actually referring to. You wanted to go back to him, and he's the one who gave it to you. That was just a means. So the king, we learn from this that raja can only take place in one place. So there needs to be a destination, a place where it ends, the raja. Otherwise, you can't stipulate, you can't regulate the place. Right? If you don't regulate the place, then it's aimless. You need to have an aim, an objective. وَلَا تَرْجُوا إِلَّا رَبَّكَ. So we learn from this that even a king or a person of some form of richness or power has no power and authority in reality. He is also in need of his Creator and of his Lord. Moving on, he says, وَلَا يَسْتَحِيَ الَّذِي لَا يَعْلَمْ أَن يَسْأَلَ حَتَّى يَعْلَمْ. This is from the etiquette of learning. And Ali radiallahu anhu was known as the door of knowledge. He was immense, one of the greatest scholars that the world has ever seen, whether from this nation or any other nation, but definitely, if not the greatest scholar from Kufa, he was one of the greatest scholars. If not the greatest scholar from the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was definitely one of them. So he says that the individual who doesn't know, who is not learned, let him not be shy to ask the individual who is learned. Someone who knows, there's nothing to be shy about. Someone who doesn't know, there's nothing to be shy about asking him. This is the way that you acquire knowledge. One of the great scholars and the great students of Ibn Umar and Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Imam Mujahid, he was a prolific scholar in everything, in every discipline that you can imagine. He says that two people will learn nothing. Two people will learn nothing. The arrogant individual and the person who is always in a state of modesty. He's modest, he's shy, he's bashful. That person will never learn anything. Why? Because his shyness will become a deterrent from learning. Likewise, his arrogance. In fact, arrogance is the worst sickness that a person can have. And may Allah protect us from it. But this is something that is even more dangerous when it comes to acquiring knowledge. Because the arrogant individual thinks that there's nothing for me to learn. So he faces two problems. One is his arrogance, and the other is you could say the irremovability of his ignorance. He can't remove it now. He's facing what the scholars call compounded ignorance. Because he doesn't know that he doesn't know, and he's not willing to know. It's scary. Every one of us is a jahil, basit. Simple. A simple ignorant person. Because we don't know. That's how Allah created us. We didn't know anything, and then Allah gives us something. هُوَ الَّذِي أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْءٍ. He's the one who took you out from the wombs of your mother, and you knew nothing. And for that individual, or for us who think that we know something, Allah is reminding us that what happened the day that you came out of the womb of your mother? What did you know? He even taught you how to cry. Who taught you how to cry? You knew nothing. أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْءٍ. You knew nothing. Then He gave you the tools of acquiring knowledge. He gave you eyesight. He gave you hearing. And He gave you a place where all of that's supposed to lead you, the heart. All the faculties of knowing come back to the mind and the heart. And that's where it's supposed to reside. So that you may be people of thanks, people of gratitude. There's countless incidences here. This is something that the previous generation of people, the pious predecessors, have set a precedent for. That when you don't know, you ask. A very famous statement that we have come across in our reading of Sahih Muslim. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh said that the individual who knows, then let him say what he knows. And the individual who doesn't know, then he should not be shy to say that I don't know, and ask the person that he knows. And he says that this is from knowledge. إِنَّ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ أَن يَقُولَ الَّذِي لَا يَعْلَمْ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. This is from knowledge. Because you knew something. You knew and you understood that I don't know. And that is a great blessing. It's a great blessing to acknowledge your ignorance. But it shouldn't stop there. La adri nisful ilm is a saying of Imam Shabi rahimahullah, that I don't know is half of your knowledge. Because you know that you don't know. That's a great thing to know. But it should not be lan nadri. No, we have to aspire to learn and attain that knowledge that we don't know. Because being in the state of ignorance constantly and perpetually is not a good thing. Allah raises the individuals of knowledge. He raises their status. And this is exactly what the Prophets left behind us. They did not leave behind us any material. لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما وإنما ورثوا العلم. They left behind knowledge, sacred knowledge, or beneficial knowledge. So that's the advice that he gives Ali radiallahu anhu. And then the saying goes, وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ الصَّبْرَ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ بِمَنْزِلَةِ الرَّأْسِ مِنَ الْجَسَدِ. The idea of sabr needs to be defined, because again, it's something that many of us have misconstrued. Sabr is to hold something back. It's to restrain something, in particular oneself. It's to restrain the self. And this is a great gift from Allah. It's one of His sifats, in fact. It's one of His attributes. It's something that He was known for, that He is known for. As-sabur, not just sabir, but He's as-sabur, someone who has the quality of sabr. The Prophet ﷺ has been attributed to him in one narration. He says that مَا أُعْطِيَ أَحَدٌ أَطَاءً خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعًا مِنَ الصَّبْرِ. That no one was gifted, or no one can be gifted a gift that is greater and more encompassing than sabr. It's a great gift to have. To be someone that withholds himself, restrains himself. Now this doesn't just mean that, okay, I'm not going to do anything. That's not what sabr is. Idea, again, understand the concepts. So sometimes we are tested with obedience. We need to obey. And we need to do a certain act of obedience. So you must do that. You must be patient and do it. Sometimes we're tested by not doing something. We have something that is very dear to us in front of us. We want to take it. Right? Biryani is being cooked right in front of us. It's still asr. But what do? Right? That's called sabr. In fact, that is what epitomizes, that is at the very core of what this month is all about, is developing the quality of sabr. In fact, you don't have a choice. You have to do it. But inshallah, it becomes something that is part of you, as opposed to something that is outside of you. There are things that are beloved to you. Right? You want to eat, you want to drink, you want to do a lot of things, but you can't do it. Why? Because you have to withhold yourself. And this creates a great human being. And this is one of the qualities that the Prophet ﷺ had. He says that no one was patient the way that I was patient for the sake of Allah. No one. At the same time, no one was persecuted the way that I was persecuted for the sake of Allah. So Ali radiallahu anhu here in his saying, it goes that sabr in relation to iman is like the relation of the head to the body. Can you imagine a person walking around without a head? You can't really imagine that, right? And you shouldn't. It's a scary sight. Because it doesn't really exist. It's not supposed to exist, or it can't exist. The body without the head, you can't really imagine that. The body needs the head, because the head is what drives it. The sabr, the idea of being patient, withholding oneself from doing what they desire to do, this is at the very core of iman. He says, فَإِذَا قُطِعَ الرَّأْسِ ذَهَبَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. If you cut off the head, then what happens? Then the body is a waste. It goes to waste completely. Then he says, فَإِذَا سَمِعْتَ كَلِمَةً تُغْضِبُكَ فِي عِرْضِكَ فَعَفُ وَاصْفَحْ. So now he's giving us a solution here. He's our shrink. He says, فَإِذَا سَمِعْتَ كَلِمَةً تُغْضِبُكَ. If you hear something that angers you regarding your honor or your dignity, someone decides to mess with you. It's picking a fight from outside on a different WhatsApp group. You're not on it, but it comes to you. فَعْفُ وَصْفَحْ. Then pardon. Afa means to let it go. Let it go. And turn the page. فَصْفَحْ. Pardon and let it go. This is what sabr is. Because you've held yourself back. فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. As Allah says constantly in the Quran, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. This is what really puts everything together. This is of the most resolved affairs. A person of resolve can do this. A person of determination. So this is his saying, right? Ali radiallahu anh. And this, you get the idea of what type of knowledge this is. This is the knowledge of the self. This is how to be. He's teaching us how to be. And then you have the saying of Umar radiallahu anh that he brings here. It's a different saying, but it's also very profound. He says, قال عمر ibn الخطاب رضي الله عنه من خاف الله لم يشفي غيظه. The one who fears Allah, he will not satisfy his rage. Amazing. You can only imagine. This is a sifa again of Allah, because you see the type of atrocities that take place, and you see that Allah is not doing one. This is a quality, again, it's a quality of Allah. تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ, as the saying goes. تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Embody the character of Allah, the attributes of Allah. Allah has these attributes, they're meant to be embodied in the human being. Not every one of them, but many of them. So he says, مَنْ خَافَ اللَّهِ لَمْ يَشْفِي غَيْظَهُ. The one who fears Allah, he does not satisfy his anger, his rage. And he says, وَمَنِ اتَّقَاهُ لَمْ يَصْنَعْ مَا يُرِيدُ. This is amazing. And the one who truly has vigilance of him, like we define taqwa too. It's not the same as khawf. The idea or the component of fear is there, but the idea here is being mindful, being conscious of Allah. The one who is conscious of Allah, لَمْ يَصْنَعْ مَا يُرِيدُ. He doesn't do as he pleases. He doesn't do what he wishes. This is wrong. You're not, aapki man, aapki khuda nahi hai. Your man, your ji, all of these things have a very negative connotation in our religion. They're called hawa, nafs, right? One's desire, shahwa. If you translate them into Arabic, you're going to find a very bad language that is used in the Quran for these things. You don't do what you desire, you do what Allah desires. Lam yasna' ma yurid. Then he says, وَلَوْلَا يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ لَكَانَ غَيْرَ مَا تَرَوْنَ. This can be interpreted in different ways. But the idea here is that if it had not been for the day of resurrection, al-qiyamah, the day of standing, the day of resurrection, you will see other than what you see. لَكَانَ غَيْرَ مَا تَرَوْنَ. At that time, people believed in a very important concept or important idea, doctrine, a creed of qiyamah. The idea of being reckoned, the idea of being resurrected. This is something that is essential to our belief. You have to believe in this. Al-Ba'ath Ba'd al-Maut is part of your belief. And you have to believe in judgment. It's part of your belief. Now what that means is it's not just something that you memorize for class or something that you say, okay, I did so now I'm a believer. It's something that you bring into your philosophy, your individual philosophy. So when you truly believe that there is something called reckoning, there's something called a day of judgment, you'll find that your actions will be other than what you see. Every one of us here sitting here will say that I believe in the day of judgment. But that belief needs to be something that penetrates the heart. Then it becomes iman, true iman. Now there's a saying that's worth noting. At-taqiyyu muljam. We talked about taqwa yesterday and the day before. The saying goes, At-taqiyyu muljam. Lijam is the rein or the bridle that's put on the horse or the camel. And at-taqi is the one who adopts the quality of taqwa. The one who is a muttaqi, the one who has taqwa, has a bridle on his mouth. He doesn't speak whatever he desires. لا يتكلم بكل ما يريد. So if you want to know where you stand in your taqwa, you can simply see where you stand when you open your mouth. The moment that you open your mouth, what comes out, that is indicative of what your taqwa looks like. So the saying goes, التقي ملجم لا يتكلم بكل ما يريد. The individual who has a quality of taqwa, this person is wearing a lijam, like a horse, a bridle. He doesn't say whatever he desires. And this is something very important. Why? Because at the very least, what you may be doing is harming yourself. ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Allah speaks about this individual. And in fact, it's out of His fadl, His great bounty and grace upon this ummah, that He says that we have inherited the book to a group of people that we have selected. They're all Mustafa. From amongst them, there are those who have oppressed themselves. So even the person who's oppressed himself, he's still Mustafa, because he's inherited the book, Kitab. So the Dhalimu li nafsi is a person who's oppressed himself. Now we don't want to be amongst those people. We want to be amongst the other people. He refers to two other people, three groups. Dhalimu li nafsi is the one who has oppressed himself. And then you have an individual who wants to be a moderate Muslim. Just tell me what I need to know about my religion. Tell me what I can do, what I can't do. Muqtasid. And then you have those individuals that vie with one another. They compete with one another. They try to surpass in khairat, in good. But again, that is only by the permission of Allah, so that they don't get arrogant. سابقٌ بالخيرات بإذن الله. And that is true fadl. That is the greatest fadl. So there's something that a person should at the very least understand, that if I say whatever I desire, even if it doesn't harm another person, I'm still to some degree oppressing myself, because I could have been using this time to do at the very least dhikr. I could have been doing dhikr, I could have been reading, I could have been reciting the Quran, I could have been praying, I could have been reading something that would have benefited me or someone else, at the very least. Now when it comes to harming another person, there's a very interesting story here, it's reported. There was an alim by the name of Sufyan ibn Hussein. He says that one day I mentioned a person and I didn't say something good about him in front of one of the great ulama of his time, Iyas ibn Muawiyah. He was considered one of the most intelligent people that ever existed. Someone who had, his intellect was complete, intelligence was complete. So he was known as he was a qadi of Basra. He was a qadi, he was the chief justice of Basra. So I said something bad about a person in front of him. He looked at me and he said, "Ghazawta ar-Rum?" At that time, the Muslim Empire was expanding. So he said, "Did you participate in the battle against the Romans?" He said, "No, I didn't." He said, "What about As-Sind, Wal-Hind, Wal-Turk? What about Sindh, present-day Pakistan? It wasn't Muslim back then. It wasn't so Pakistan back then. What about India? What about Turkey? They weren't Muslim. It wasn't part of Muslim territory at that time." So he said, "No." So he said, أَفَسَلِمَ مِنْكَ الرُّومُ وَالسِّنْدُ وَالْهِنْدُ وَالتُّرْكُ وَلَمْ يَسْلَمْ مِنْكَ أَخُوكَ الْمُسْلِمُ. Is this the fact of the matter, that India, that Rome, Pakistan, India, and Turkey, they're all safe from you, but not your brother, your Muslim brother? He said after that, I never backbit again in my life. That was enough. Meaning that, what's the point? What did you get out of that? All you've done is not only oppressed yourself, but you've oppressed your brother. You've consumed from his back. And this is something that is, unfortunately, it can be something that can be very, very sickening. It's a sickness, but there's a remedy for the sickness. There's always a solution. So the Prophet ﷺ is the greatest psychologist because he's not only identified the problem that exists in all human beings, but he's also provided a solution. Now that solution isn't always something that can be clearly discerned. The people that came prior to us were the most capable of discerning the solution. So there was a great alim by the name of Abdullah ibn Wahb. This individual was considered one of the grand muhaddithin of his time, the grand scholars of hadith tradition. He was so profound in his study of hadith. 100,000 hadith he had memorized. He said, however, that this profound, expansive knowledge has caused me to become lost. أكثرت من الحديث حتى حيرني أو حتى تحيرت. I have learned so many ahadith that I have become perplexed. Why? Because every time I find a hadith, and you understand that he is amongst the people, he's one of the Rijal of Bukhari, but he's amongst the people who transmit the hadith. So the question isn't about the hadith being sound or not. He knows whether the hadith is sound or not. One says do this, one says don't do this, one says the Prophet did this, one says the Prophet didn't do this, and he says not to do it. How does this work? He said, وَلَوْلَا مَالِكْ وَاللَّيْثِ لَهَلَكْتُ. If it had not been for my teachers, Imam Malik, who was a jurist, Imam Layth ibn Sa'd was one of the greatest jurists, I would have perished. They taught me how this works because they taught me fiqh. So hadith without fiqh is a means of misguidance. You have to acquire the knowledge of the hadith through the scholar of fiqh, the scholar who understands how the hadith works. Where does it fit in a person's life? Anyway, he says that I placed it upon myself that every time I would backbite about a person, then I would fast one day. This is amazing because he was one of the greatest muhaddithin in fuqaha, but this was something that he had to obviously work himself up to. My Ustad, Fi Sa'id, Hafidhahullah, Panpuri would say, "Ke koi doodh ke dulave nahi banta." No one comes directly from heaven, and no one is washed with the milk of heaven. Everyone takes a bath with water. You're not something special. Every person kind of builds himself up to who he is. This is the way that Allah has created human beings. So he himself, he says that every time I would backbite, I would put upon myself the fasting of one day. And then that became very easy for me. After some time, that became very easy for me. Can you imagine that? And then he says that after that point, I decided to, every time I backbit, I said I would give one sadaqah, 1 dirham in sadaqah. And that became difficult for me, so I stopped. This is the way that a person remedies himself. He cures himself. He identifies his problem, and then he works on it. This is the fruit of muhasabah, of self-reckoning, because he understood that what I'm doing is wrong. That's a great place to be. And this is the solution for it. Inshallah, we'll continue with the reading. For now, may Allah grant us the ability to act upon whatever was said and allow it to become a means for our rectification here and become a means of salvation in the hereafter. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.